We're going to learn a little bit about lighting the Hannukah candles.
258, yes?
258. Actually, we'll start maybe on 257. The menorah and the shamash. The menorah and the shamash. David, why don't you read for us, please, on page 257, section 11. We're in Pnei Halacha, Zmani, chapter 12, lighting the Hannukah candles, section 11 on page 257.
The menorah and the shamash. It is proper to beautify the mitzvah by using a beautiful menorah, each according to his means. Some go above and beyond to buy a menorah made of gold or silver. One who does not have a menorah may stick candles into a flat surface and light them. Similarly, one may take small glass cups, fill them with oil and wicks, and light them. One should not, however, light the candles in disgraceful vessels like city earthenware. One should take care to leave space between the candles so that each one can be seen separately, thus publicizing the miracle. In addition, if the candles are too close to one another, the flames may merge, which disqualifies them. Regarding wax candles, another concern arises. If they are too close, they will cause one another to melt before half an hour passes.
By the way, I don't know if this is a common problem. You know those small, colorful wax candles, which that's what I grew up with. You know, you could buy them for $1 or $2. A box of 44 candles. Why 44?
You need 44 candles.
Why?
Because
44 candles are the amount of candles we light all together on Hanukkah.
1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus
2 plus 3 plus 4.
8. That's 36. 1 through 8. Adding 1 each night is 36 candles. And then you need another 8 for the shamashim. So it's 44. In any case, these small candles, if you have a very small Chanukiah where they're right next to each other, really close, like these are candles, and if you put them right next to each other, what happens is that the flame, the heat from this flame, not only burns down its own candle, but it also affects the candle next to it. And this flame not only burns down, but the heat affects the candle next to it. And so both will get double heat. And the candles, if they were placed like this, they would last for half an hour, which is the minimum shear according to the halacha. But if you place them right close to each other, they won't last for the half an hour. And that, you have to be careful, use a Hannukah where they're a little bit separate from each other. Yes, Yaakov?
I remember I was reading the kids' Shulchan Aruch, and it kept on saying when you have to make sure that candles are far enough apart so that they don't create a torch.
That's something else. That's actually
different.
if the wicks are intertwined, that's considered to be a torch.
Okay.
Like Havdalah candle, exactly. And that's not kosher. It has to be a candle, not a torch.
It could even be if they're close enough, because there's an experiment that you can do with those little tea candles, that if you take tea candles and you put them right up against each other onto a table, you actually create a firestorm. That
Wow.
you can end up with a single flame.
But that's not what they mean. That's not what
my
they
question
mean.
is,
That the
what is
actual
the-
wicks touching each other.
What is the, I understand it's the wicks touching, but what's the issue with the torch itself?
So the halachically,
Is it like a weapon? Is that what?
No. The halachically, there's a definition of a candle versus a torch. Well, single flame versus flames that
Okay.
wicks that go together, and we find it in different contexts. But I don't really want to talk about it more.
Sorry about that.
It's not called a candle if you have more than one wick there.
So would you be allowed to use 8 Havdalah candles?
No,
No.
not at all.
Not
Exactly.
even one of those would.
Correct.
Yeah, it has to be single ones.
Correct. Okay, so that's what he said here on page
But what's our
257.
now I've got to ask this question, what's our definition of a wick though? Because most of the wicks we use are themselves braided materials.
Good question. Yeah, it's true, but they look like one. They look like one. I think that's considered to be one wick. They're one from the bottom.
Candle.
Yeah.
We have a Havdalah candle, the strand is separated by wax.
Right.
So with the wick, it's like they may be woven together, but
Correct.
they're all touching already.
Yes.
Havdalah
Exactly.
candles are very, very sad. I'll look it up sometime not right now.
Another time. Go ahead, David. We're reading the last paragraph on page 257.
Technically, one fulfills the mitzvah even if he does not place the candles at the same height or in a straight line, as long as they are separate and a person standing close can tell that they correspond to the days of Hanukkah. Similarly, one fulfills the mitzvah by placing candlesticks in a circle, since each candle stands on its own. Preferably, though, one should place them in a straight line so that all onlookers can see the candles all together and discern their number, which corresponds to the duration of the miracle.
So I don't know if you've ever seen that. We're pretty constricted. The artists bemoan this halacha very much. They all have to be in the same line, the same height. They can't. So technically, they're right that it can be. It's kosher. You're going to have, a spiral going up in the shape of a flame. You can have 1, 2, 3, 4, but different. It's kosher as long as you can see that they're different candles. They don't, the person who looks from the side doesn't think that they're all just one big long candle. It's kosher. However, it's preferable to keep them on the same line. So it's very clear that this is now 1, next night's 2, next night's 3, and very candle. So I think it's rare to find a Hannukah which is not, on an incline or a decline or circular. Technically, it can be kosher.
Do they have to have separate oil?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes. Go ahead.
In order to prevent people from violating the prohibition of benefiting from the Hanukkah candles, the custom developed to light an additional candle to serve as a shamash. This way, if one needs light where the candles are burning, he will use the light of the shamash. Technically, one does not need to light the shamash in a room that has electric lights. Nonetheless, many people still light a shamash in order to emphasize the difference between the Hanukkah candles, whose light we may not use, and the shamash, whose light we may use. However, in order to avoid miscounting the candles, we place the shamash at a different height or distance from the other candles to make it clear to all which are the Hanukkah candles and which one is the shamash. The prevalent custom is to place it higher than the rest, so that if someone needs light, it will be clear that he is using the light of the shamash and not that of the other candles.
Okay, where's your shamash on your Hannukah? Is it?
Mine's in the middle, but
Yours
it's
is
like
in the
the
middle.
tallest.
Nice.
I placed
The
mine on the
tallest.
left.
Yeah, yours is on the left.
I think.
For many years, I had.
Is there a most preferable place to put the shamash? Because mine's all
Separate,
mirrors.
separate,
So-
right.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
My aquarium this year has a spot on the top to have a separate shamash there.
Nice.
Is that proper?
It's fine. Yeah, anywhere
And then
near.
what about getting rid of the shamash entirely? Because I've noticed a lot of people do seem to do that here.
Right. So it's not the custom. The custom is to have a shamash.
Well, but the custom here seems to
Like
be
I said,
mixed.
technically you don't need it if you have lights. You have
So
other lights. Nobody's
count-
going to use the Hanukkah candles as lights. People don't use candles for lighting anymore. Right? We moved past. Thomas Edison made sure that candles are no longer used for seeing. The more romantic or whatever purposes they are, very rarely used for lighting the environment.
I was wondering that the other day, so technically, if one places an aquarium on the ground and it's not the 30 tvachim up,
3.
three tvachim, 30 centimeters up, but in today's world, would that not be obvious? In other words, nobody sees an aquarium sitting there with candles going in it and thinks.
It's kosher. It's kosher. It's just the best.
Idiot.
Yeah, it's the best versus this. Okay, setting up the candles. Everybody, so far so good? No questions? No comments? Perfect. I know, I like questions. But we can move on to the next halacha. Who's going to read for us now? Noam, I see you're hiding in the corner. I try to pull you out of the corners. Go for it. 12, page 258, section 12.
Setting up the candles and lighting them. When setting up the menorah, one is faced with several choices. Where, preferably, should the first candle be set up on the first night, the second on the second night, etc., and which candle should be lit first? Even though one fulfills the mitzvah according to the custom of Machon Meir, no matter how he lights, the ideal practice is as follows. On the first night, one sets up the candle on the right side of the menorah, from the perspective of the person facing or lighting the menorah, because the right side always takes precedence over the left. On the second night, one sets up the new candle to the left of the first one, and after reciting the brachot, one lights the new candle first, followed by the one to its right. There are 2 reasons for this. 1, it is preferable to begin with the new candle, which symbolizes the increasing greatness of the miracle. And 2, after lighting the leftmost candle, one will have to turn to his right in order to light the next candle. And the sages teach that when one turns, it is preferable that one turns to the right. On each subsequent night, one adds a new candle to the left of the candles he lit on the previous nights and lights the new one first. Then he turns to the right and lights the rest. when reciting the brachot, it is proper to stand on to the left of the menorah so that the closet candle will be the one he lights first. Oh, sorry, the closest candle will be the one he lights first. Yeah, the closet candle. This way, one avoids skipping over the other candles in order to light a new one.
Thank you. You everybody get that? It's
Yeah.
a little intricate.
So then would a left-handed person light in the opposite direction,
No,
even though they're turning in the wrong direction?
it's not the wrong direction. Left and right, you know, they can speak English and they can speak Hebrew. They can write English and write Hebrew from the left to right. So take a look at the page. What I love about Hannukah, I said it the other day, that it's pretty much, you're really gonna have to work hard to make it non-kosher. You can put the Hannukah on your table, you can put it on the doorway, you can put it on the windowsill. They're all kosher. You have personal preference. Here too, bottom line is, you light the Hannukah candles, the 8 candles on the 8th night, 5 on the 5th night. Any old order is kosher. The debate is what's the best. And here, he presents in the Pnei Halacha what Noam just read for us so beautifully, was the standard practice of most communities, as you can see in the footnote. That's the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch and the Darkei Moshe and the Arizal. In the
So
footnote, you could one second. The footnote 15, the Kaf HaChaim also states that. However, if you look on the page I just gave out, the first line is the same, right? You see the first line on the page? It's the same system. The first night is the rightmost candle. The second night, you add a candle, but which one do you do first?
The new one.
The new one, exactly. You always light the new one first. However, underneath the first line, you see the other opinions, which not brought here in the text of Pnei Halacha. They're brought in the footnote, 2 additional customs. And the second one is called the Shita of the Taz. That's in Pnei Halacha on page 260 in the footnote. That's the third opinion. And the third opinion is the Gra's opinion. And basically, you can see the first night is all the way to the left of your page. The first night all the way to the left of your page. So in the middle row, the opinion of the Taz, you do, of course, the first night is easy. Second night, also the new candle, but it's to the right of the candle. Third night, same thing, new candle, but you go from right to left. So that's a little bit why the Shulchan Aruch doesn't like it, because you're supposed to go left to right. You're supposed to be turning to the right. Anyways, but that the Taz felt that was better, and the Gra's opinion, you could see also, it's starting on the left-hand side of the Hannukah instead of the right-hand side, but he says you don't start with the new candle each day, you start with the leftmost candle every day, finally getting pretty much the numbers go in order from left to right, like we're used to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the 8th night of Hanukkah. 3 opinions, they're all kosher, and each one has a little bit of an intricate logic about why this is better, which of these ideas, moving to the right, moving to the left, starting with the new candle, starting with the older candle, which one takes precedence? Fascinating, all kosher. Questions, comments? Have you seen anybody light other than the standard way in the top row? You have, yeah.
And I got an answer of those 2 candles, which I asked you the question about the other day. Because there's a couple of families in my neighborhood who only like the 2 candles. And it goes back to that their families were so poor that that's all they could afford. And so in their public, even though they could now afford, they don't want to, they feel like it would be chutzpahdik to light more than their great-grandparents could, so they light the same as they lit.
David, on the contrary to that, wouldn't you want to light more to say, look at how far we've come, is that
I would, but that's not with that, I'm not arguing for that, I'm simply saying where it came from.
Oh, that again, yeah.
I brought it up the other day and I was told, well, nobody does that, but there's a couple of families that do that, and I found out what the reason was.
Okay, yeah, interesting, thank you. Very
How
interesting.
come yesterday the non-Ashkenazim, they lighted their candles and did prayers before the Ashkenazim?
Like before, yeah, they did before Maariv, which
First
is.
part of halakha, it's permissible, if it's mutar to do the language.
First grass rub.
It's permissible to do it before or after.
Answer your question, I'd like you all to turn to page
I have
244.
a question, by the way. Was the gra?
Actually, not to page 244. What's it? It's in the next chapter about when to light the candles. That's on page 271.
Was the gra much smarter than the other rabbis, or is he being chutzpahdik? Which is it? Because it's one or the other. When he says to disregard all these other customs and take on nizah, and I've discerned what it is, it's either that he's smarter than the others, or it's that he's being chutzpahdik and he's not. Which is it? It's one or the other.
I think it's the former.
He's that much smarter?
Yeah, he was-
So maybe we should take, should I take on, there's something to be said to taking on the customs of the gra?
Yeah, but it has to be all or nothing, and I'm not in favor of going out onto extremes. If you want to follow the Gra and all of his customs and all of his halachot, there is a community of Gra followers.
Strong one.
Are they-
Yeah,
are they
but
Ashkenaz?
it's a small minority.
Are they
Very small
Ashkenaz?
minority. Yeah, Ashkenaz, yeah. But he wasn't, like you said, there's a limit to his genius as well. And it's probably on me to make that judgment. You should follow the custom of your family. If you don't have one, so you choose the custom that the community that you live in. The community, if you joined a community which was all Rav followers, then you would join that.
So how did Rav Kook play?
I don't know, but I assume the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, everybody look on page 271. Page 271. To answer Yaakov's question, because it's confusing here, where we merit to live among people from various communities, people that came from the east, people that came from the west, people that came from the north, even people that came from the south. We let some of them in. Okay? Who's going to read for us?
I volunteer to read.
Moshe, go for it.
Number 4, the proper time.
Exactly. Number 4, the
Number
proper time,
4,
page
the
271.
proper time and duration of lighting. The sages ordained that one must light the Hanukkah candles when the miracle will be publicized most effectively. In the past, when there were no streetlights, at nightfall the streets would fill with people returning home from their daily activities. Therefore, the sages declared that the proper time to light the candles is from sunset until the marketplace empties out.
Stop there. That's the key sentence. From sunset until the marketplace emptied out.
So what if the marketplace, or in this case, maybe not a marketplace, just a place where most people gather, is not emptied out still at 4 a.m.?
Absolutely. So there is a rabbi, great rabbi, I just heard. He said, nowadays, I believe you should put enough oil in your candle to last from sunset till the 4 a.m. Or he said 11 p.m. because with the town that he was living in, there was still traffic in the streets until 11 p.m. But wherever you happen to live, if that's the common place, that's where people are. Society changes, styles change, lifestyles change, especially now that we have, of course, electricity. We have streetlights. And it used to be that, when the sun went down, that was it. You'd be walking around with a torch if you were lucky, in the dark if you weren't. And so, of course, people weren't out at night. But nowadays, where there's streetlights everywhere, you live in a city, nightlife is a big part of your daily routine. And therefore, this halacha should change. And you should light the candles for longer, until the marketplace empties out. There was a great rabbi in Jerusalem, you've heard of him, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. And he used to live right near, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the story is about him. He used to live near you guys all know Jerusalem now as a modern, very big city, the biggest city in Israel, with nightlife. But in the day, there was really only one central movie theater. I forget what its name was, but it was in the center of town, near Strauss Street, and I forget its name. And there was basically, the way it worked, guys, it's about bothering me, the little talking. Basically, the way it worked is that there was 2 showings of the movies, like now there's like a 7:30 or 8 showing, and then there's a 9:30 showing. The movie finishes at around 11:30, and then that was it. The last traffic of people was leaving the late show of the movie, and then the streets would empty out, they'd be finished. And the rabbi said, so the halacha of the Hannukah candles now depends on the people going to the movies. You can imagine this great rabbi never saw a movie. He doesn't know he didn't approve necessarily of going to movies. But the halacha of the Hannukah candles depends on the traffic. It doesn't depend on what the people are doing. And so he said that's the end time for lighting the candles, which has ramifications as we're going to read. But we've been focusing because Yoshua's question took us there on the second part of the sentence, until the marketplace empties out. Right. What about the first part? First thing and to answer Yaakov's question, we have to focus on the first part of that sentence, which is from sunset. Aha! What does sunset mean? You're laughing because, of course, it means when the sun goes down. What's the question? It's not so simple because sunset, as we know, there is the ball of the sun that goes over the horizon. That's intuitively what most people would answer. That's what sunset means. However, in the context, what were the sages looking for? They were looking for a time when people are returning home for their daily activities, and even though the ball of the sun goes over the horizon, you have still plenty of light. Still plenty of light for another hour, even. Depends what part of the world you're in. That twilight time is much, sometimes
For weeks.
because you don't even have day. Okay, there are countries like that, but we're talking about where most Jewish communities are. So there's something called twilight. In other words, the ball of the sun has set, but maybe it's not quite called sunset yet. So there's different opinions about that. Let's read it. Moshe, the Rishon, last line of 271.
Sunset here refers to the beginning of sunset, meaning when the sun disappears from view, or to the end of sunset, meaning when the sun disappears from view.
When the sunlight disappears.
When the sunlight disappears from view as well as the stars become visible. On one hand, at the beginning of sunset, the streets are more crowded. On the other hand, since there is still a relatively large amount of sunlight at that time, the cameras are less visible. Therefore, it is better to wait until Tzeit HaKochavim to light.
That means when the stars come out.
Indeed, the widespread practice in Israel is to light at Tzeit, which is about 20 minutes after Shekiah in Israel.
Which Shkia means? Shkia means
Sunset.
sunset. Okay, so he paskins that the best thing to do is to light at Tzeit HaKochavim, which if we take 20 minutes after Shkia is 4:40, sunset is about 4:40, the ball of the sun goes down about 4:40. Nowadays, here in Israel, Jerusalem area, a little bit different, north, south, but about 4:40, 4:37, whatever it is. The most common custom, he says, is to light 20 minutes later, which would mean 5 p.m. Personally, I try to light at Shkia, at sunset. That's the minhag of the Gra. You mentioned a lot of people follow the Gra. I don't follow all of the customs of the Gra, but that is the words of the Gemara. The Gemara says from sunset until the marketplace empties out. And so I think usually I'm late though. I just know myself. And usually when I'm a little bit late, I aim for sunset, but of course it's kosher later. It's actually better, according to many poskim, to do it 20 minutes later. So usually I end up doing it a little bit after sunset, 10 minutes after, 15 minutes after, maybe 20 minutes after. That's already tzeit. According to some opinions, that's the ideal time to light. So I aim for sunset. As the Gra says, that's the ideal time. But many times I get closer to when it's actually a little more dark, the candles are more noticeable. And but as you know, as this Jacob asked in his question, there are communities who follow the Gra, and therefore they light at sunset, 4:40. They say the best time to light is right away at sunset, because that's what the Gemara says. Light at sunset. So don't do anything else. Don't eat, don't learn, don't learn. When the time comes for lighting candles, that's what you should do first. So go ahead and you light at sunset. And then there's some, like most opinions who say, no, that's not time yet. You have to wait until stars come out. When do the stars come out? So here you have a whole nother can of worms. Issue. how long do it take?
stars.
Because the stars are always there.
Stars, they're always there, but when can you see them? Well, we know the same problem happens on Motzei Shabbat. Anybody know what Rabbeinu Tam is? Who is Rabbeinu Tam?
One of Rashi's grandsons.
That's right. Rabbeinu Tam had an opinion that the stars come out only 72 minutes. Ariel, it's bothering me. Only 72 minutes after the sunset can you actually have enough stars. Basically what he means is when you can see all the stars.
You can't even with light.
72 minutes. Light pollution, obviously you're in the city, so you won't see them all. But the majority of the stars are out there 72 minutes later, not 20 minutes later. Like when do we take out Shabbat?
20 minutes.
No. We're Machmir because Shabbat is a mitzvah d'oraita. We don't do malach until usually 35 minutes after Shkia. But many communities are going to be davening Mariv on a regular day, 20 minutes after Shkia, even 13 minutes after Shkia. That was maybe more appropriate in Europe, but the bottom line is a certain amount of time after sunset, it's considered to be the halachic definition of the stars. It's not all the stars, but 3 medium-sized stars. 20 minutes, half an hour, you're safe. It's definitely Seita Kochovim. You can have Mariv, you can light your Hannukah candles. Rabbeinu Tam, my son, follows Rabbeinu Tam, like many of the Hasidim. He doesn't light his Hannukah candles till 72 minutes after sunset. Okay, now I'll take some questions. Yaakov and then
I was going to ask someone about very, very observant Jews. So doesn't that mean they start Shabbat earlier than most because of the 72 minutes, as you just mentioned?
No, the sunset, even people who are Machmir, on the end of Shabbat, they end Shabbat later, they've accepted upon themselves not to start Shabbat that late. And they start Shabbat with the earlier sunset, at least in terms of not doing malacha. And but a couple hundred years ago, the standard was to follow Rabbeinu Tam. Shabbat started later and finished later. Nowadays, pretty much universally, it starts early with the actual sun going over the horizon. Nobody will allow you to do any malacha, any prohibited work on Shabbat once the sun has set beyond the horizon. You have to get off the bus, stop your car on the side of the road. I don't care what happens. The moment the sun has set, do not do any malacha. Even if you say, I'm a Rabbeinu Tam guy. No, that's only to be machmir, not to be lenient. So nobody says,
What
you
about the
know,
list
and
of
then
things that we can do though in the Mishnah that we read each week?
it's for a short amount of time, and that's only very short list.
We still can do it, those things, can't we?
That short list, yeah.
Tithe question.
Yeah, but those are not biblical prohibitions. So that's a very limited list. And most people don't do those kind of things. You don't need to do them between.
It's because they're rabbinic, so therefore you can be.
That's correct. Jacob, does that answer your question?
Sort of, yes.
Sort of, yes. Okay.
It's
You
okay.
want to clarify more?
No,
or
it's okay.
You're good. Okay, no.
2 quick questions. What's twilight in Hebrew?
Bein hashmashot,
Bring us Mashal. And also,
between the suns.
is there a time when it's too late to light a Hannukah?
Good question. So that goes back to what I was discussing with Yoshua. Some poskim say, okay, you only got a half an hour after dark. Okay, maybe you got an hour after dark because we're not sure when dark is. But bottom line is when traffic stops, when people are not in the streets anymore. So it's dependent on where you live. If you live in Sleepy Town like I do, maybe by past 9 o'clock, nobody's out on the streets. So maybe you can't light your Hannukah candles. Let's say I got home from work one day late at 10 o'clock. Nobody's there. Can I light my candles with? Can I make a bracha? That's a good question. I will want to show you on page 275, 277. There's a long discussion of what to do, not in the ideal situation.
If you forget a day, does it work like this?
No, not at all. Not at all.
When you don't make bracha for the rest of
Not at all. And let me just give you a bottom line before I take your question, Moshe. Is that on the same topic or is it a different
Yeah,
question?
no, it's
Same topic, go ahead.
So, one of the questions is, could one interpret the marketplace empties out to being when the local grocery store closes? I asked this question completely seriously.
Could be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Depends on the society.
And I thought we said previously when we were reading that even if somebody who was in the middle of a desert, they would still light because they themselves will see the candle.
True.
So therefore, even though it's ideal to light earlier, regardless of what time the latest movie's gotten out, I'd say one should still light.
Excellent. So this is discussed in the poskim, and that's part of my bottom line story that I'm going to tell you about what to do when you didn't light candles at the proper time, didn't light candles when it gets dark, when the sunset, 20 minutes after sunset, an hour after sunset, you're already 2 hours after. Ariel, I'm sorry, it's bothersome. It's just a small room with a little echo, so please minimize the little talks amongst yourselves. It's just, my throat is also, teaching for 3.5 hours in a row, so I need the quiet, okay? Thanks. So in terms of bottom line, so there's a lot of debates about this. If, let's say, if there's still people out on the street, no question. People still on the street, light your candles in the window, at the door, wherever it is, no question about it. But if people are not around anymore, you can always light the candles. Lighting a candle is no prohibition. Light the candles at 2 a.m. There's nobody there. Light the candles. The question is, can you say the bracha? Because you're saying God's name. You don't want to say God's name in vain. If you're not going to be fulfilling the mitzvah properly, then you can't say a bracha. So can you say the bracha on the candles if you light them after 11 o'clock at night? After 12 o'clock at night? Okay, let's make it clear. Even in Jerusalem, nightlife is not so crazy. After midnight, after 1 a.m., there's no more buses anymore. There's not a lot of people on the street. Maybe you'll get lucky if one person an hour comes by. Depends. Sometimes it depends what part of town you are. But let's say you're in the part of town which is not the center of town, and you're just in the suburbs. Okay, you're in the burbs. Kiryat Moshe, 2 a.m. No, not a soul. Okay, so what do? So I have the privilege. I live in a yeshuv. Most of you have been to my home, and in the yeshuv we have a patrol for security reasons. So there's somebody that's driving around town all night long. He allows me to light my Hannukah candles even at 2 a.m. But let's say you're in the city, you don't have patrols like that come out every neighborhood. Maybe some neighborhoods they have their own protection, but nobody's outside. Many poskim said you cannot light the candles with a bracha at 2 a.m. because nobody's going to see it. That's very difficult. I come home from work, I come from the airport, 2 a.m., I didn't get a chance. I want to light the Shabbos candles. So what do I do? So many poskim say, you come home, it's true you won't have any pirsumei nisa, you won't be able to publicize the miracle outside your home, but what about inside your home? Inside your home, you have your wife, your husband, your kids. But they're sleeping. Some poskim say, wake up your members of your household, and so that they can listen and watch you light the candles. You'll be publicizing the miracle for them. Other poskim say it's really a problem to wake people up. You're stealing their sleep. You shouldn't do a mitzvah by doing an aveira. So then it's a question. Would they be happy if you woke them up? Would they appreciate? Would they be happy to assist you to do the mitzvah of publicizing the candles? If yes, then yes. If yes, then yes. But wait, I'll finish. I have to finish because there's another class coming. If no, if you decide that I have a big problem waking people up, even my own kids, I just have some kind of a psychological problem. So if you're not going to wake somebody up, then it becomes a question. Can you make the bracha on the candles for yourself? You are also, as David said, you are also looking at the candles. You are also publicizing the miracle for yourself. Some poskim said you can light the candles even if you're on a desert island. Nobody else is seeing them. It's only you. Go to the doorway, light your candles, because for yourself. But as I go on to the more and more extreme positions, you're on shakier grounds. Halachically, some poskim would say, do not make a bracha if nobody else is going to see the candles.
Publicize it online, like put a picture of it on Snapchat or something.
I like that. I think that would. I'm lenient about this. I think if you're by yourself, but if you're going to put it on Facebook, maybe that helps. Makes you're publicizing the miracle. Nice idea. Yeah.
But isn't the mitzvah over the lighting itself? Because couldn't
how long does the story last for? Half an hour? Can you put it on your Facebook story? Right, they disappear after a while. I think that's the ideal.
Yeah, for
right?
24 hours.
Oh, 24 hours? Oh, because
Yeah.
then you're for sure.
There are other posts where you can just post it, and especially now, let's say we're lighting here, people in America are going to be seeing it for their
That's right.
second or third day, or
That's
whatever
right.
day it is, for much longer.
That's right. So that gives you more leniency.
That could be the best thing to do.
Yeah, for sure.
People are constantly seeing.
Yeah. But bottom line is, I think the poskim are right, that I would never say to somebody who wants to fulfill mitzvah, don't do the mitzvah, even if it's late at night. You yourself are going to see the candles, and I'm lenient about that, especially if you're going to publicize it in some other way, then that adds to the leniency. Yes.
I remember back in Passover, we had the question about blessings over horseradish for people who couldn't taste because of Corona. And the answer is that they could say the blessing over matzah because they could feel it, the texture in their mouths, but they wouldn't say it over the horseradish because they couldn't taste it.
Interesting.
In this case, isn't the blessing over the lighting rather than the seeing? Could not a blind person by themselves could still light it as long as they can actually figure out where to light?
It's a good question. It's another chapter in the book. It discusses this at length, the question about, but right, is the mitzvah to the action of lighting or having the candles next to your house? It's a larger question which we don't have time to go into right now. I have to give you a break for the next class. Happy Hannukah! We'll see you tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem.
No.
On the Tiyul. I'm coming.
You're coming with?
Coming.